Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Atri Adhya Chatterjee from GT Binani PG College, Mirzapur. Today we are going to talk on the module Feminist Characters in Bengali Theatre under the paper Women, Theatre and the Fine Arts. After studying this module, you should be able to A. Convey to the reader the rich traditions of feminist theatre in Bengal, also about the advent of English theatre in India, the renaissance of Bengali theatre, the great national theatre which is the pioneer of Bengali theatre in India, and other theatres like Minerva Theatre, Star Theatre and the group Bohurupi. You should also be able to know a little bit about the Indian People's Theatre Association, the Calcutta Little Theatre Group, the new emerging figure of the woman professional, and some women dramatists. Now let me introduce you to the paper. The theatre as we know it today is merely 2 centuries old, as this form of drama is a direct fallout of the British rule in India, which began from their capture of Bengal through the Battle of Plassey in 1757. However, dramatic performances were not alien to Bengalis. They had their own indigenous folk form of the drama, which were called the Jatra. Now, what were the Jatras? The Jatras originally were religious plays that formed the repertoire of devotees travelling from village to village with their gods, especially during festival times. And one such famous festival was the Rath Jatra or the Chariot Festival, where the images of Sri Krishna, his elder brother Sri Balram and sister Subhadra were taken around on a chariot, and plays on the life of Sri Krishna were performed as part of the festival. Now, one thing that has to be kept in mind about such Jatra plays is that all the female roles were played by young teenage boys or young men. The other dramatic folk forms that were popular are Jhumur, Leto, Alap, Gambhira, Kathakata and Kobigan, etc.
With English theatre came the concept of the proscenium stage or a raised platform where there was a distinct separation between the actors and the audience. In the Jatra, on the other hand, there was no separation between the two. The audience sat on all 3 sides of the stage or sometimes even sat on it, and the actors often sat amongst the audience. After the Britishers had established their rule in Bengal in 1757, they started providing the Bengalis with an English education. They learned English grammar, poetry, drama, prose, etc. In order to entertain themselves, they also started staging English plays. As a result, the elite Bengalis were exposed at quite an early stage, that is, compared to the rest part of the country, to the plays of Shakespeare, Molière, and the comedies of the Restoration period. The first Bangla play, titled Chhaddavesh or The Disguise, was staged in Western style with Bengali actors and actresses in the year 1795. Horashin Lebedev, a former Russian bandmaster in a British military unit, and Goloknath Das, a Bengali linguist, were the persons responsible for this remarkable feat. This play started a new trend of blending Sanskrit drama, Indian folk theatre, and Western dramatic style by Bengali playwrights and directors. Gradually, with the rise of nationalism and anti-British sentiments, this new medium became a powerful tool in the hands of Bengali dramatists. They started stirring up and awakening the masses against their British masters. Michael Madhusudhan Dotto, Dinobandhu Mitro, Girish Chandra Ghosh, and Vijendra Lal Rai were some of the stalwarts and pathbreakers of those times. Bengali theatre witnessed a renaissance between 1795 and 1890. The theatre of Bengal Renaissance is very crucial in understanding of the history of modern Bengali theatre. This period of Indian history rather, witnessed some of the profoundest and most radical changes in power structures in the subcontinent since the rise and fall of Islamic rule in India during the past few centuries. The Bengali Renaissance was the outgrowth of a grafting of British culture onto that of the more than willing native culture. This enormously enthusiastic response of the Bengalis to Western culture and its tenets imposed by the British was far greater than the adjustments required to cope with a colonial administration. It was a search for a cultural identity that could at some level set them at par with their Western masters. It was a ploy of beating their own masters at their game. When the wave of social movement hit the Bengali stage, many plays pertaining to women's issues got written and staged. In 1856, Umesh Chandra Mitra wrote Bidova Bibaho Natak, a play on widow remarriage, in support of Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar's widow remarriage movement. On similar lines, Shinal Peerbaks wrote Bidova Biroho Natak. Many plays also got written on various social issues like child marriage, polygamy, alcohol abuse, and prostitution between 1860 and 1872. Unfortunately, though they dealt with relevant social topics, they do not qualify as good plays, and theatre critics like Dr. Sukumar Sen have trumped them as trash. Dinabandhu Mitro's Shodhvar Ekadashi, that is, the Ekadashi fast of a married woman, introduced satire as the flavor of the new season, where the playwright makes fun of the hollowness of blind Hindu rituals and superstitions. Jorashaku Thakurbari, the home of the Tagores in Calcutta, actively promoted theatre for social cause. They shifted the Bengali theatre trend of adapting Sanskrit drama to writing originally socially oriented Bengali plays reflecting contemporary issues. The Jorashaka Natyashala committee advertised for scripts based on Hindu females, their conditions and helplessness due to the atrocities of the village zamindars in the Indian Mirror dated 15th of July 1865. An award of rupees 100 and rupees 200 were to be given to the best scripts. This was also the first time in Bengali theatre when the elite class thought about making the life of the poor common folk a subject matter of theatre. The Jorashako Natyashala Committee and Shobhabaja Private Theatrical Society heralded the entry of middle class and commoners into the theatre arena, signaling an end to the monopoly of babus in Bengali theatre.
Uh, Now let us talk about the Great National Theatre and some other very famous theatres of that time. The Great National Theatre was later renamed as Minerva Theatre when its proprietorship was changed, and it played a huge role in shaping up Indian theatre. Sri Jagadananda Mukherjee, an eminent lawyer, had brought some ladies out of the parda of the conservative society to welcome the Prince of Wales with a play put up in his honor at the Great National Theatre when he visited Calcutta in 1876. Now, the Bhadralok Samaj or the traditional conservative Bengali society was scandalized at this, and they put up a farce that caricatured this move to bring ladies of good Hindu homes from the Andar Mahal or the private domain into the Bahir Mahal or the public domain. To stop such farcical acts, an ordinance was issued by the Viceroy Lord Northbrook, empowering the government to ban such plays which were scandalous, defamatory, seditious, obscene, or otherwise prejudicial to public interest. Later in the year, this decree was ratified by the Dramatics Performances Act, which saw the beginning of theatre and film censorship in India. Thus, the Great National Theatre played a big role in bringing women from conservative traditional Bengali families out into public spaces. This must have been a very big step towards liberating Bengali women from the home and hearth where they were wont to be tied down for the whole of their lives.
Most of the times, as I said before, women's roles were played by young boys or men. But when they were played by women, the actresses were not from good families or high society. They mostly came from the families of prostitutes. These women were either prostitutes themselves or the daughters of prostitutes who tried to lift themselves up from their position in society, although society at that point of time looked down on them as women of loose moral character. Minerva Theatre was the first to engage actresses from the brothels because ladies from respectable homes would not act in them. When Bengal Theatre appointed 4 prostitutes as actresses in 1873, newspapers like Madhyasto and Bharat Sanskarak went shrill with their criticism of this move. It was felt that from then on, prostitutes would get equal rights to socialize. Civil society was scandalized, and huge, widespread protests followed, but very soon, other theatre houses started doing the same. With the establishment of Star Theatre, a new star was born on the firmament of the Bengali theatre scene in the person of Binodini Dashi, who had very humble beginnings. In fact, she was the daughter of a prostitute, but went on to become a colossal figure in Bengali theatre. The Star Theatre hosted Rabindranath Tagore's Grihodahe during his lifetime. Interestingly, Binodini Dashi's acting career spanned a period of just 12 years. But in those 12 years, she gave such remarkable performances that she is considered as the single most powerful woman actress that the Bengali stage or even the national stage has ever produced. She was a protege of Girish Chandra Ghosh and she retired from public life when she was at the height of her acting career. Girish Chandra Ghosh, who was a stalwart of Bangla theatre, had a highly professional approach and his plays had a high impact value in society. His plays like Neel Darpon, Mir Qasim, Chhatrapati, and Shiraj-ud-Daulah deal with such diverse yet socially relevant topics like the exploitation of indigo farmers by the British landlords, to internal squabble between petty kings and princes, infighting, treachery, and national pride. His outstanding style of acting, which was both powerful and brilliant, was imitated by many of his contemporaries and juniors, for example, Amar Datta and Dani Babu. He was a mentor of Binodini Dashi, the single most of the powerful actresses that the Bengali stage has ever witnessed. Therefore, Girish Chandra Ghosh should in fact be regarded as the father of modern drama in India. Unfortunately, in many of the plays during Girish Chandra Ghosh's time, women were represented as women of loose moral character and meant for laughs, gags, and for the general entertainment of the mostly male audience. Renowned Bengali dramatist and poet Rabindranath Tagore, who went on to win the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1912, also contributed greatly to Bengali theatre by creating his own unique style of drama, where he merged and reinvented and recast Hindi classical drama, various forms of Indian folk theatre, and certain elements of European drama. Tagore's style of experimental theatre was very different from all of his contemporaries. The venue for staging of all his plays was at first Dorashako and later at Shantiniketan, the school set up by Tagore. He wrote, directed, and even acted in his plays, where his cousins, nephews, nieces, and students participated. Tagore's plays were popular among the elite and intellectuals of Calcutta. Tagore wrote his first operas, which were known as dance drama, Balmiki Pratibha, that is, the genius of Balmiki, after returning from England in 1881. One can hardly overrate Rabindranath Tagore's contribution to the feminist cause through his numerous poems, plays, novels, and critical writings. Some of his plays, like Chandalika, gave us a strong feminist message where an untouchable girl, the daughter of a dome, which is the lowest of the low castes, finds self-respect and is emancipated from the bonds that chain her to slavery and a life of hopelessness through the help of Ananda, a Buddhist monk who shows her how to become independent. Some of his other popular plays are Raja, that is the King of the Dark Chamber, Raktakarabi or Red Oleanders, and Muktadhara or Unbound. Shishir Kumar Bhaduri, Naresh Mitro, Ohindra Chaudhary, Durgadas Banerjee are some of the actors who adopted realism in the Bengali stage. Their female colleagues Prabha Devi and Pankaboti did the same as actresses of this age. Shishir Bhaduri founded Srirangam Theatre Company, which was functional till 1954. Bhadu's style of acting was adopted by Shombu Mitra and his wife Tripti Mitra. This actor couple were part of IPTA, the left-wing People's Theatre movement. Shomu and Tripti Mitra founded the drama group Bohurupi in 1947. Bohurupi enacted Rabindranath Tagore's famous play Raktakorabi, that is Red Oleanders, Bishorjan, that is Sacrifice, and Raja Oedipus, that is Oedipus Rex by Sophocles. Bohurupi under Shomu and Tripti Mitra put up such socially relevant plays like Bishorjan, which was by Tagore that deals with the Hindu ritual of animal sacrifice. Raktakorabi, Chop Adalat Cholche, that is Vijay Tendulkar's Silence the Court is in Session, where a robust, vivacious young woman is censured and humiliated by so-called upholders of moral values in order to maintain the feudalistic status quo in society. And Aparajita, a one-woman feminist play. In all these plays, Tripti Mitra played the main part. The IPTA, or the Indian People's Theatre Association, was a very popular movement, especially in the 1940s, during India's struggle for independence. It is a very important movement from the point of view of women's theatre as well, because this was one of the cultural platforms where, for the first time, the participation of women as a stage performer or a public figure became socially acceptable. It helped in bringing women out into the public domain of drama and social activism. Utpal Datta, another colossus of the social theatre, was also associated with IPTA because of its Marxist socialist ideology. Bangla theatre developed on two separate lines. One was the commercial professional theatre that was primarily urban and based in Kolkata, and the other was the non-professional or new or other theatre. Shishir Kumar Bhaduri was the first playwright who tried to merge the two together. The Calcutta Little Theatre Group was established by Utpal Datta in 1947. Ibrahim Alkazi, another playwright, shifted from English to Bengali language theatre in 1954. Both Datta and Alkazi contributed greatly in making Bangla theatre highly popular in post-independent India. Datta, who was first fired by Maoist ideology, took his dramas to the hinterland of Bengal, to its rural folk in villages, and staged them on the most rudimentary of stages, and thus roped in a larger gamut of audience. The new emerging figure of the working woman or professional woman was a largely new entity in the urban middle class families in Calcutta. The issue was quite complicated, controversial, bold, and new for the people to readily accept. After independence, although it was evident that with modernization and economic progress, certain cultural changes would set in, there was still confusion as to how these will affect the gender equations at the workplace. Therefore, the Bhadru Mahila, or educated urban woman in a public space, was an image of contrary cultural forces at work, at the same time, which society at large was not ready to accept. She could at the same time seem both progressive and corrupt, emancipated or developed and depraved, dedicated citizen and willfully selfish. The economically independent woman stood at a difficult juncture of a patriarchal, feudalistic society that refused to accept her independent, assertive status, wishing to curb her impulses and cut her down to size, and the progressive times that were giving her a convent or otherwise education and pushing her towards the workforce. This problem has been admirably dealt with in Mohanagar, that is the metropolis, a film by Satyajit Ray in 1963. Many other literary and cinematic classics have also dealt with this problem. During these changing times, the position of the actress was doubly dubious and not very respectable. Boli, or Sacrifice, written in 1960, is Tripti Mitro's first play. It is also probably the very first play written by a woman in Bengali literature after independence. It tells the story of a woman's dilemma who is caught between saving a fugitive of law who is her former suitor and handing him over to her husband, who is a deputy magistrate from whose prison the fugitive has escaped. The woman, unable to bear the tensions of being pulled apart by opposite forces and conflicting emotions, puts an end to all this trouble by committing suicide. Women participated shoulder to shoulder with men in the Naxalite movement that took Bengal by storm in the mid 1960s and 70s. It ravaged many homes. Mahashweta Devi's Hajar Churashir Ma, that is, the mother of 1084, deals with the psychological and emotional trauma of the main protagonist, Sujata, who wakes up one morning at a phone call from the police station to discover that her beloved son, who is now lying dead in a morgue, was a Naxalite and is now reduced to corpse number 1084. In her day-long journey of struggling to understand her Naxalite son's revolutionary commitments, she starts discovering her own alienation from the complacent, hypocritical bourgeois society that her son had rebelled against. By mid-1960s, the function of group theatre as a means of nation-building had fizzled out almost completely. It was now being perceived mostly as a minor theatre and an expensive hobby. Along with growing disillusionment with theatre was also the problem of lack of government funding for theatre projects. In Bengal, this problem was all the more acute because of the Marxist leftist ideology, which influenced most of the group theatres and which was mostly at loggerheads with governments at the centre. Nondikar, the theatre group founded by Ajitesh Bandyopadhyay on 29th June 1960, staged quite a few women-centric plays like Noti Binodini and Antigone in 1972 and 1975 respectively. K.R. Chakraborty gave memorable performances in both as the central figure. K.R. Chakraborty also gave sterling performances in Teen Poishar Pala in 1969, Bhalo Manush in 1974, and Football. The mainstream feminist or women's movement reached its peak in early 1980s, basically propelled by a series of events happening then in India. A. The Supreme Court verdict in the Mathura rape case. B. The Roopnagar murder case, also known as the Sati case. And C. The passing of the Muslim Women's Act in the light of the Shah Bano case in the mid-1980s. Malini Bhattacharya's May Dile Sajiye, that is, Giving Away the Girl, a play on dowry, Bandur Khela, The Monkey Dance, a play on sexual and political violence, and Ato Rokto Kano, that is, Why So Much Bloodshed, again on sexual violence within married couples between in the context of a Muslim family, were part of the repertoire of every group that was working on women's awareness issues. Mostly these plays were staged as street plays with the bare minimum or no props at all, with the audience watching the performance from all three sides. The last of the three was inspired by Rabindranath Tagore's Bisharjan or Sacrifice, where Tagore criticizes animal sacrifice as part of Hindu religious rituals as a perpetuation of violence, and in which a small girl asks this question, Eto Rokto Kano, or why so much bloodshed? Shauli Mitro, born in the late 1940s, was daughter of the doyens of Bengali theatre, Shambhu Mitro and Tripti Mitro. She wrote Nathoboti Onathpoth, that is, Five Lords Yet None a Protector, and Kotha Amrito Shaman or Timeless Tales, questions the role of a woman, a wife, and a mother in the context of the royal households of the Mahabharata and how they continue to have a relevance even in our modern times. Both of these plays are one-woman performances in the tradition of Kathakatha, a Bengali folk art form of dramatized storytelling with live music. They reveal the tragedy in the lives of the royal women Shottobati, the three abducted princesses Amba, Ambika, Ambalika, the queens Kunti and Gandhari, and the daughters-in-law Draupadi, Subhadra, and Uttara. Nathobati Onathboth is the first play that gives feminist interpretations to the characters of Mahabharata in modern Bengali theatre. In the play, the tragedy of Draupadi's life is told from a feminist perspective, giving it a new interpretation. Draupadi, married to the five Pandava princess, suffers humiliation at the hands of the Kauravas, who are her husband's cousins. She also questions the role of Kunti and how she could allow Draupadi's marriage to her five sons, whether Yudhishthir could really be called a Dharmaputra, and whether the Mahabharata was really a Dharma Yuddha. In Katha Amrito Shaman or Timeless Tales, Shauli Mitro looks into the tragedies of all the royal women of Mahabharata and how they continue to have a deep relevance even in our modern times. Some other plays that have been directed by Shauli Mitro are Rajnoitik Hotta or Political Murder, Bitoshto Bidongsho, and Poshu Khamar or Animal Farm written by George Orwell. Putul Khela, A Doll's House written by Henrik Ibsen, and Chondalika written by Rabindranath Tagore also hold out strong message for society. Thus, Bengali theatre has, since the beginning, dealt with women's issues and continues to do so even today. The Bengali stage has given us some great actors, directors, playwrights, and several memorable performances.
So students, let's now summarize what we have learnt in this module. 1. With English theatre came the concept of the proscenium stage, where there was a distinct separation between the actors and the audience. Earlier in the Jatra, there was no separation between the two. Second, with the rise of nationalism and anti-British sentiments, this new medium became a powerful tool in the hands of Bengali dramatists in stirring up and awakening the masses against the British masters. We have also learned that Michael Madhusudhan Dotto, Dinabandhu Mitro, Girish Chandra Ghosh and D.L. Roy were some of the stalwarts and pathbreakers of those times. We have learned that Bengali theatre witnessed a renaissance between 1795 and 1890 approximately, and this renaissance is very crucial in the understanding of the history of modern Bengali theatre. We have also learnt that Minerva Theatre was the first to engage actresses from the brothels because ladies from respectable backgrounds would not act in plays. And we have also learnt that Binodini Dashi was one of the greatest female actors of the Bengali stage, who herself was a prostitute at one time, and she was a protege of Girish Chandra Ghosh, who wrote plays that had a high impact value in society. Some of Girish Chandra Ghosh's plays, let us recapitulate, are Neel Darpan, Mir Qasim, Chhatrapati, and Shirajud-Dowla that deal with very diverse yet socially relevant topics. We have also learned that Rabindranath Tagore's contribution to feminist thought has been great. His play Chandalika is one of the plays to remember. We have learned that Shishir Kumar Bhaduri, Naresh Chandra Mitra, Ahindra Chaudhary, Durga Das Banerjee were some of the actors, and Prabha Devi and Kankabati were the actresses, and they all adopted realism in their plays. We have learned that Shambhu and Tripti Mitro founded the drama group Bohurupi in 1947. In all the plays in Bohurupi, Tripti Mitro appears in the main role. One very important theatre movement to remember was the IPTA, or the Indian People's Theatre Association, which was very strong during India's struggle for independence. It was very crucial in bringing up the participation of women as a stage performer or a public figure. It helped women come out of their homes into the domain of drama and social activism. IPTA gave us a very great personality in theatre in the person of Utpal Datta, who was a colossus of the social theatre. One feminist playwright that we should always remember was Malini Bhattacharya, whose plays were part of every theatre group that was working on women's awareness issues. Shauli Mitro who was the daughter of Shambhu and Tripti Mitro, wrote Nathoboti Anathbot and Kotha Amrito Shaman that questions the role of women, a wife and a mother in the context of the royal households of the Mahabharata and how they continue to have a relevance even in our modern times. We should remember how it still influences the modern theatre. Thank you.